Hello and welcome into another video on this channel. Today we'll go to a Express.js application written in Node, and we will try to implement a basic functionality for logging in. So we will try to make a request to our Express application to create a user, and then we will try to get through the process of logging in. So let's hop into the console and work it out. Alright, we are back in our VS Code, and here is our Express.js application which we are building. And if you don't know or didn't see how it is built, I will link some videos down below. But just to get very briefly through that, we created a basic Node Express project. We are instantiating an Express. We have a rate limiter, which rates the requests so that we have our windows in milliseconds. So right now we have 1 second, and we have 1 minute, and we have 10 limits of requests. And then we have some basic, we are doing some work on the middlewares and how they are working. So those are very basic middlewares that we don't actually use, or they are just throwing some console logs and create req user. We'll maybe use it later, and we are listening in our application or our port. So let's run it using NodeMon, so it will write our requests. And we also will be using Postman, so that if you don't know what Postman is, we have video about that also on the channel. So I will link it down below. And let's just send a very basic HTTP GET request to localhost 8000, and we are getting this name John and age 42, this Riku object, which was stringified from this middleware, but that's not an issue today. So how would look a registration, and how would look a login in, and then how would look some kind of a security on that? So let's assume we have some users array. Right now, without any database or whatever, we will make it in memory stuff. And let's say we would like to create a new route. Let's call it register, where we'll send a post request with a payload of username and password. How it would look? Let's do an app post to .register. We will take the req and response object, and then we can do it this way. So we will extract the username and password out of the req body, and then we will do a users push username and password, and then we will do a very basic res send with a status of 200, or maybe let's add a status. So res status 201 user registered. And let's try it right now. Let's go here. Let's change that to post. Let's do /register, and let's throw a payload. Let's throw a payload of raw, and it will be converted to JSON. And let's push this object here. So we will push username, let's say briefly, and let's throw a password, which will be let's call it password simply. And let's write send this request. So we got an error. All right, let's go through the code. Username, password, req body. Okay, here is an error. So we tried to use express.json middleware, which is actually transforming the JSON object on the fly while request is coming in from the string representation to an object representation. But for it to work, we need to wrap it in app.use exactly the same as this limiter. Let's go back. Let's try to send it one more time. And yeah, we have a user registered. So right now, let's try to create another one route, more or less the same, which would be for logging in. So let's copy that. Let's do also a post request on the, let's say, login. We will deconstruct username and password from req body, and then we will send that the user logged in. But firstly, we need to do a find method on this user. So let's do const user równa się users find, where the user.username is equal to username. And then if user exists, we will write this res send. And if it doesn't, we will throw something that user not found. But this will be only for the user. Now, what we would like to do with password. We usually don't want to show like user not found or the password mismatch, because this is giving a little bit of a hint that, let's say, we have a username, but the password is wrong, or this username doesn't exist. We would like to throw something more general. So let's do this way. We will also compare the passwords. So if user and user.password equals password, then user logged in. Other way, let's throw something. Oh, we can throw it invalid credentials. So let's go back to it. Let's create a new one, and let's do a post. Firstly, we need to register the same user because it's in memory, as I mentioned. So each nodemon restarts also the users. And let's do here an HTTP localhost 8000/login, and let's throw here the same object. So let's do body raw JSON. Let's throw it here, and let's see if it will work. Send. User logged in. Let's do something with the password. Invalid credentials. Let's do proper password, but break something here. All right. The basic logic works. But what now? If we would do a console log on this users array, we would see that the password is like sitting there in a string exactly 1-to-1. The very popular approach to working it out is to hash the password. So hash, when we will create a hash from, let's say, a password called password, it will create a hash of this password so that it cannot be decrypted. Hashing, besides encryption, does the same stuff but in a different way. So if we encrypt the password, we are able to decrypt it and know the value of the password. But in hashing, it is a simpler form, but the thing here is that you cannot revert it. So what we are doing actually, we are hashing the password to something, let's say, like this. But we are taking password from the user and creating the hash, right? And comparing the hash. So we are not comparing passwords directly, so password to password, but we are actually hashing the user password and comparing hashing with hashing. This is being taken from the approach that if we hash something one more time, it will always be the same. So we can compare the hashes. So let's try to solve it using a very popular package which is called Bcrypt. Let's go to npm.js and let's search for Bcrypt. It will have around 1 million or even 2 million of weekly downloads. Yeah. So this library we will use for hashing. So let's firstly install it. So npm install bcrypt. Let's import it. Const bcrypt require bcrypt. Yeah, so that's our line. And then we need to do few things. So first thing, we need to create a hash on the registry route, and we will also use something called salt. Salt is something that is added to the hash so that it's harder to break. So there is something called rainbow attack. So because if we know that the hash will be the same, we can, let's say, compute hashes in advance and create a dictionary of hashes, so that, okay, we know that AAA gives this hash, BBB gives this hash. And then we can work out, not by the compute power, but just brute force, comparing the already known hashes with the password which is hashed. But to mitigate that approach and that vector of attack, we are creating something called salt. So we are actually prepending the password with something else, or adding at the end of the password some kind of lines that are very narrow to our application. So let's try to solve it, and let's go here to this register route, and we will change something here. So we will do a salt, const salt equals bcrypt generate salt sync. But let's right now create a password salted. It will be a bcrypt hash sync password.salt. We can use the sync version, or we can use a promise based version and do an await on that. Let's do firstly this, and then you are giving a password and giving a salt. Let's see how it will look like. I will console log this password salted, and let's do password salted here so that we know what we are dealing with. And let's throw this password salted here. So we will not be storing a password as a password, but we will store a salted one. So let's do nodemon app.js. Let's go here to our Postman, and let's try to register. The user is registered, and here is their salted password. This is how it looks like. So right now we would like to utilize it in login, because right now the login won't work, because we will be trying to compare the password as a plain string with this password salted. So we need to compare the passwords here. So here, we will change this user password equals. What it needs to equal? It needs to equal bcrypt, sorry guys, bcrypt sync, compare sync. So it will compare the password with encrypted password. So here we will have a user.password. Let's try it right now. I need to change one more. All right, and let's see what is given here also. So let's console log a password, console log a password. Yeah, all right. And let's do one more time. Let's register, and let's try to log in. Okay, I got password error. What I did right now, it's returning true or false, so we are doing this way. So let's do register, and let's do send. And as you can see, user logged in. This is the password salted. The password is a plain text password, but if we will change it to just show that it doesn't work, let's do here in login something else. We'll get invalid credentials, and maybe let's do another user, which is like briefly 1, and the password will be only an A. So as you can see, even password from an A, this is a salted version of A, and this is a salted version of password. And as you can see, if you would get access to a database in which we would store those passwords, and this database would leak, you would not be able to see right from the start, okay, this user has a password of A, or this user has a password of password. You wouldn't even know how long in characters the password is. So that's why we are hashing, and actually that's why we are also salting, because as I already mentioned, we would be able to pre-compute the hash before, like this hash, okay, this is a password and this is an A, compare the leaked database, just compare the strings without any compute and any hashing, and if I would know that there is a match, I would go to my dictionary, okay, this hash was corresponding to password as a string or letter A as a string. So that's a brief overlook on how we approach the hashing and comparing and salting, and how we would implement a very basic register and login. So we will build on that in the future and other videos, but for now, it's all, and see you next time.